Okay, on to Certification Corner. Omar, what do you have for us on this episode?
I wanted to change it up a bit on our triumphant return,
very
Robin.
nice.
So, one I haven't taken.
Oh, interesting.
Two,
Wait,
yeah.
how deep did you have to dig for a certification that you haven't taken?
Listen, I love my mentees. They're schooling me as much as I'm schooling them on anything related to this industry. And one of the things, there's a whole host of identity and access management certifications that I might take a look at next year. But this one in particular, it's the Certified in Governance, Risk, and Compliance from ISC Squared. You might remember ISC Squared as the lovely providers of the CISP, the CISSP, which is the big granddaddy of them all. You get it at 5 years and, punch your ticket to riches, or, job security. Right? That's what they offer there. But the CGRC it's a rebrand. That's why it really truly wasn't on my radar for a little while. It used to be,
okay.
Yeah. This is one of those. Now we're getting long enough in the tooth where, ISC Squared's retiring a cert on me. I have a healthcare one that they're saying, is getting sunset next year. But this one, they tried to have it be the Certified Authorization Professional cert. So the C, like the CAP was the acronym there. It seems as though it didn't get too much traction. That's why I mentioned the IAM, Identity Access Management certs. There's a whole world of those.
Okay.
I think ISC Squared was trying to dip its toe here, but this one now is firmly, the rebrand is completely done, and the domains and everything shifted to beloved Governance, Risk, and Compliance. It's relatively affordable. It's $5.99 to take a crack at it. It's positioned, I believe, really as a specialization stepping stone on the way to the CISSP, because it's only 2 years required before you can sit for it, whereas the CISP is 5, maybe 4, depending on the type of education you bring to the table. You can get a year or two lopped off there. It's targeted at, again, because it's on the way to the CISP, it's targeted auditors, analysts, information assurance folks. That's the newer. It's the old domain that's now new domain again. I'm hearing, right? Info assurance is coming back into the forefront there, and of course, governance managers, governance directors, etc. The domains are pretty standard fare. It really strikes me as, again, specialization for if you were taking the Sec Plus, and then your fancy was tickled by governance, right? It has security and privacy governance, risk management, scopes of your compliance programs, implementation of controls, assessment and audit of controls, and compliance, and proving compliance, which is another fancy way of saying assurance or auditing. So, neat one that I'm going to slate for 25. I'm targeting it beginning of the year next year.
Nice. Okay. And this is, I mean, it's a GRC cert, really,
All day,
isn't it?
Yep.
So this is very much one for the people not so much on the technical side of things, or I could say, I mean, it's not a bad thing for technical folks to do this sort of certification, because presumably on the basis that at least the kinds of things that you have to comply with,
that you have to engineer towards. Yep.
Yeah, but if you're someone, let's say for instance you're somebody who's looking at getting into the industry, you like what it looks like, but you're worried about whether you are sufficiently technically inclined. You might have doubts about your level of interest in a really technical role, and how does that necessarily line up with wanting a career in cybersecurity? This is exactly the avenue down which you likely want to go, and there's good pivot point into that kind of role for which this sort of cert is tailor made for in other areas of business. So governance and regulatory compliance,
risk
is the thing, is risk, but those exist in multiple other forms in other industries throughout
technical
throughout
and,
the
and
economy, right?
non-technical. Exactly. Like risk is risk. Of course, this is going to get applied to
Mm-hmm.
cyber risk. But what I love,
Yep.
and where you're headed, I love what you're throwing down there, Robin. This could be that gateway for the non-technical folks, but if they look at security and privacy governance and they go, that's pretty neat, you can
Mm.
double down and go down an engineering path. What I've seen more and more is
Yeah.
privacy engineering being a thing on its own, right? The same way we saw cybersecurity emerge out of the IT realm, right? And
Yeah.
information assurance kind of go into its own, because it used to cover kind of both. Now it's on
Mm-hmm.
its own legs there. Cybersecurity is on its own legs. Privacy is no longer just strictly under the cybersecurity realm, right? Or strictly under even the legal realm. There's privacy engineering, right? That's a whole new thing. And there's certs for that.
Yeah.
We could get into those. But this is, and especially with the 2 years required, you get your feet under you. You go in as maybe like a junior analyst for GRC or even a junior
Yep.
SOC, right, or a SOC 1, and you say, hey, I've heard a lot about this GRC stuff. Let me dip my toe. It's really a nice gateway, a nice opener there, and hold it up with, say, there's a SOC certs that are doubling down, but they're coming at it more from the auditory or the audit standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Osaka being, like born from the auditors. So this is a neat little, I'm ready. I'm looking forward to it. And maybe I can do, a fun. I take it and go, how was it? What did it really cover? What did the prep
That sounds
look
good.
like? That would be nice. But I wanted to switch it up as something on my radar versus something already told.
No, very good. I mean, I think that's a neat one. Because a lot of what we have done prior as well, there's been some techie certs in there as
Sure.
well. And I think this caters to those people who, like I say, are not necessarily that way inclined, and they're wondering how they make a pivot into this industry, into cybersecurity, because it isn't, despite the number of potential job openings and the way that people are always clamoring for the talent that doesn't necessarily exist, it can be hard to break into it because cybersecurity is such a big deal that nobody really wants to be taking somebody that's completely fresh.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a background in a related field or a translatable field, or you find it easier just to get into that one of those sorts of roles than coming straight fresh into cybersecurity, then that's something that you can do. You mentioned engineering there. You were talking about it more from software engineering sort of perspective, but actual civil engineering, building inspection kinds of things. Accountants can get into this sort of thing. Financial controllers within banking, for example. I'm trying to think of other people who deal with compliancy bits. Legal, right? But it's one of those things where it's like, well, for what's considered traditionally a techie industry, actually coming from something that's very much books and pens and paper and arguing in a courtroom, it is the good pivot. Yeah. And I think it's an often underrepresented pillar of cybersecurity in the broader sense, because everybody does just see the lines of code. Nowadays, after last week, they now see the crowd strikes and that sort of stuff, and they basically just think that it's technical eggheads, and it ain't.
Nope. Not just anyway. Not just.
There's a lot of the business work needs doing too. Right. So you said $5.99. Are there any prereqs for that, or you can use?
No, it's just you have to.
Are you good just doing it straight off?
No, that you have to show 2 years of domain, like things that touch the domain. But I will say,
I see. Yes.
I will say, it's not live for the CISP, and it's still of entry level, say IT roles, even or your beginning analyst roles in different areas of cyber. Will touch on governance. It has to in some capacity. So you'll be able to prove domain. No, I think for the cert. Yeah.
Those 2-year requirements, do they have to specifically be within the cyber realm, or, as I said before, is something like if you were in financial controls or compliance or something like that within the financial sector, is that the kind of thing where you could sort of state your case?
I think you can state your case, and what I do love about the ISC is they will take a look at that, right? And if they have any questions, they're
Okay.
going to ask you. It's not like they just hit
Yeah.
you with the band hammer no straight away. They'll go, tell me a little bit more about this. How does this touch on what we're looking for as a set of prerequisites? They're not. They used to be, I think, a lot more draconian that way, but I think in an effort, right, they rolled out the CC, the Certified in Cyber, which is the true super entry level one. I think they're trying to really, cover that skills gap that you mentioned. So one of the things in their operational, SOPs, their standard operating procedures, is a little bit more interpretive leeway for what the prerequisites are. So I'm kudos
That's
to the
good.
IC squared there for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that's only a good thing, especially when there is a scenario and it's a long running scenario of skills gap, can't get the people,
Sure.
can't get the people, can't do the defense, and oh, by the way, whilst there's a dearth of people, there's also significantly increasing demand for those people, so the problem's actually only going to get worse unless something changes to redress the balance.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Smashing. Wonderful. Well, that is the certification that I've forgotten the specific name of. Remind me.
CGRC, Certified in GRC. They kept it simple, and especially with the rebrand from the CAP, I think they needed to, because for a while, what was really confusing, Robin, was it was called the CAP, but the subject matter was getting switched over to the GRC. So I was like, wait a second. And then, somebody we work with actually said, no, it's switched. Take another look at it. So I said, cool, I'll take a peek. And here I am. I'm going to grab it in 25.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Your umpteenth qualification to my none.
Listen,
in the last 2 years.
All right, skills pay the bills, my friend. All right, you're a valued compatriot.
I know.
All right, you stop it.